We need your help. That's not something I ever wanted to hear in a hospital, but alas, there I was. My wife was in labor with our youngest child. I'd witnessed the birth of our oldest, and for those of you who say birth is beautiful, it is, and it's also a crime scene. And I have it's just true. And I have a weak stomach. In fact, while my wife was in labor with our oldest child, the doctor looked at me and looked at a nurse and said, "Get a chair behind him right now because he's about to pass out." And I have not lived down to this day, all these years later, the fact that while my wife was in labor, her doctor had to take time to call to the nurse to make sure that I didn't crack my skull open from passing out and falling on the floor. But such is life. Such is life. So when they said, "We need your help," I explained to the nurse that was not a possibility. And she said, "All you have to do is hold her leg." And I said, "No, you don't really understand. I'm not holding her leg." And she said, "Just hold it right here." And that's where, while my wife is in labor, I looked at the nurse and said, "I am paying this hospital thousands of dollars to deliver a child so that I can actually witness the birth of our child. I don't care who you have to find, but go find somebody that's able to hold her leg." And I don't know what all transpired after that, but a moment later, 2 other nurses came into the room, and everything was great, and I got to not pass out and witness the birth of our youngest child. And I tell you that story because the birth of both of my children was a profound experience for me. It was profound, and it shaped my life. It changed me. Certainly, I changed in more drastic ways, probably with the birth of our oldest child, but both of those experiences, they changed who I am as a person. And each of them, they left their mark on me, and they changed me. And in life sometimes, we have these moments, whether it's the birth of a child, or whether it's losing someone that's important to you, the loss of a loved one, whether it's going through a traumatic experience, whether it's something great that happens along the way. There are these moments, and there are these circumstances and situations in our lives that change us. They're profound experiences, and they change us at our core. And this morning, as we continue our journey through the book of Daniel, we're going to see an experience that changed Nebuchadnezzar, the evil king that we've seen as we've journeyed through the first 3 chapters. And today we're going to start by looking at the first part of Daniel chapter 4. So if you have your phones or your tablets, I'd invite you to follow along with us this morning in the Bible app. It's a free resource that you can find in whatever app store you utilize on your device. And there are a number of great features within the Bible app. A feature that we use together each and every week is called the events feature. You can either enable your locations once you open up the events feature, or you can type in Lakeside, Algoma. We'll pop up and you can follow along with us that way. If you have a traditional Bible with you, we are journeying through the Old Testament book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 4. And that's where we'll be today. And if you're joining us via the stream, thanks so much for joining us. My name is Brian. I'm part of the team here at Lakeside, and the verses will be available for you on the screen below. Now, I don't have time to recap all that we've seen throughout the first 3 chapters of the book of Daniel, but just to remind you of what we saw in Daniel chapter 3 when we looked at it last week, were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were men who had a desire to follow after God. Nebuchadnezzar, wicked, evil king, they were forced into his service. Nebuchadnezzar built a massive statue, and he issued a decree that when music played, everyone had to bow down and worship the statue. And if they didn't worship the statue, they would be thrown into a blazing furnace. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, "This goes against God. We're not going to do it." The Chaldeans, who Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had taken some of their positions of authority in the kingdom, the Chaldeans saw this as an opening for them to regain control. And so they pointed out to King Nebuchadnezzar, "Hey, you have government officials who aren't following the decree of the king, and that doesn't really look so great." So Nebuchadnezzar is furious. And he brought in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and he said, "I'm going to give you a chance. And when the band plays, you are to bow down and worship the image as the decree states." And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to do that. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was so irate, he had the furnace heated even hotter. So hot, in fact, that the guards who threw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the furnace were killed by the flames. But then supernaturally and miraculously, Nebuchadnezzar looks, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are joined by another in the midst of a raging fire in the furnace. And they are not harmed at all. And King Nebuchadnezzar is blown away by how God has delivered them. And that's how Daniel chapter 3 ends. So now we get to Daniel chapter 4, beginning in verse 1, where we read these words. King Nebuchadnezzar, to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. Peace be multiplied to you. Now remember how Daniel chapter 1 began. This is Daniel 4, and King Nebuchadnezzar is saying, peace be to all of you. Daniel chapter 1 begins with this same king, King Nebuchadnezzar, sending armies into Judah and overthrowing Judah, capturing Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, bringing them as political prisoners to Babylon after he has overthrown their country. And here is that same king, now King Nebuchadnezzar, saying peace to everyone, and ultimately that's what so many people desire. Most humans desire peace. That's a basic human desire. Now, the ways of gaining peace, they're debated. Whether you're a war hawk or a hippie, at the end of the day, what you desire is ultimately peace. One viewpoint is we get to peace through force. And that's the way that we can ultimately bring about peace in the world. The other viewpoint's just love everybody. Let everybody do whatever they want. If you smoke enough weed, then everybody's going to be happy anyways. And so that'll bring about peace in the world. And so at the end of the day, everybody wants the same thing. The way we go about it is ultimately different, and that's where a lot of debate and discussions lie. But there is that basic desire for peace. And Nebuchadnezzar is crying out, hey, may you experience peace. May the whole world experience peace. And then we get to verses 2 and 3. It has seemed good to me to show the signs and wonders that the Most High God has done for me. How great are his signs, how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion endures from generation to generation. Here is Nebuchadnezzar having just seen the miraculous, having just seen God do the supernatural, and his takeaway is how absolutely incredible is God. How incredible are the ways that God works. He can't shake it. He can't get around it. He has just witnessed it. He has just seen God do the truly supernatural and the miraculous. What you might not recognize as Nebuchadnezzar is crying out this praise is ultimately, as he says, how may his kingdom is an everlasting kingdom and his dominion endures from generation to generation. Ultimately, Nebuchadnezzar is crying out the fulfillment of the dream that he had in Daniel chapter 2. Again, we don't have time to look at all of Daniel chapter 2, but in Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream and it troubles him. And this dream is of a massive statue. And ultimately, Nebuchadnezzar and his kingdom are part of that statue, and then other kingdoms of the world are other parts of that statue. And at the end of the dream, there is a massive stone. A stone comes, and it just completely destroys this impressive statue. So much so that the remnants of the statue are nothing but dust in the wind. And ultimately, that stone becomes a mountain. And the fulfillment of that is that God is going to bring about a kingdom that destroys every other kingdom. And God's kingdom will be eternal. And he will rule and reign forevermore. And ultimately, Nebuchadnezzar is crying out the fulfillment of that when he says, God's kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. And his dominion endures from generation to generation. And this is just yet another reminder for us that we see all throughout the book of Daniel that kings rise and kings fall and kingdoms are established and kingdoms pass away. But ultimately, all of it, even the siege that we saw in Daniel chapter 1, all of it happens within God's control. God is sovereign. He is supreme. He is on the throne. And throughout all the different kings and all the different kingdoms that this world has ever seen and will ever see, Ultimately, God is in control, and he's in control of who's in control. And there's this element that I just want us to pause just for a moment. That Nebuchadnezzar recognizes that God's work endures from generation to generation. And every generation thinks, oh, the world's headed to hell. It was so much better when I was younger, and those were the glory days. And if you look now at what's going on in the world, it's an absolute dumpster fire. And if you look at this next generation, you're like, what hope is there in them? And that's just part of a natural aging process. Every generation has thought that. And the reality is, in some ways, maybe things were better in ages past. And yet, let us be reminded that God's work is not finished. God is not done. God is still at work, and there never has been, and there never will be a generation too far gone for God to do incredible things through. And this is one of our driving principles at Lakeside, that we believe that the next generation is absolutely vital. We don't just think they're the church of tomorrow. We think they're an absolutely vital part of the church of today. We say it all the time, and we mean it. What happens down that hallway is just as important as what happens in this room. What happens on Wednesday nights at student ministry, at the youth club, is just as important as what happens in this room. And we'd love for student ministry to meet here, but the reality is we don't have the space right now for it, and we're going to be talking about that in the months to come, so be ready for that. But we would love for that to happen here. And we see God doing incredible things through the next generation right here at Lakeside. It is a privilege to partner with you, and we recognize that as parents and as grandparents, it is your primary responsibility to instill spiritual truths in your kids. And we have the unique opportunity that we get to link arms with you. And we get to help you in that process. We get to celebrate all that you're doing. We get to celebrate the work that God is doing in kids and students' lives. And we're seeing them give their hearts to Jesus. We're seeing their lives transformed. We're reaching a number of students whose families don't come to Lakeside and aren't part of Lakeside, who aren't part of a church. So we're getting to share with them the hope of Jesus every single week. Pastor Jacob and his team are doing an incredible job with that, and we are so thankful for the ways that God is working in the next generation. But it's not just happening here at Lakeside. As long as I have the privilege of leading Lakeside, the next generation is always going to be something that is a main value to us. We're never going to lose sight of that. And it's not just happening here, it's happening across the board. And so you might wonder, well, hey, I don't really have kids and I don't have grandkids, so this Fall Fest thing that's coming up, should I really do a trunk for trunk or treat? Should I really be here? Should I really be part of that? And the answer to that is absolutely you should be. This is an opportunity for you to pour in to another part of Lakeside. Again, they're not just the church of tomorrow. They are just as much a part of the church of today. So if you haven't signed up yet to host a trunk, today's the last day. After today, we're taking that part of the sign up down, and we're just making it to sign up for if you're coming to the event. So if you've been on the fence, if you're like, should I or should I not, this is an opportunity for you to connect with families that have younger kids, and as we strive to connect with them and help them point their kids to Jesus. So I hope you'll sign up for that today. And I'm just saying, if you're like, hey, how can I impact the next generation, but I don't want to have to go volunteer at student ministry every single week? This is a great way, okay? So I'm just saying, get some bonus points in heaven and not have to go to student ministry every week. But we are looking for people that love students as well to help out at student ministry every week because God's doing some incredible things there. Generation to generation, don't let a king who is evil have a better view and more optimism of how God is going to continue to work than you do. And recognize God has always worked through generations, and God will continue to work through generations. A generation is never too far gone for God to work and do incredible things through. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at ease in my house and prospering in my palace. Here's Nebuchadnezzar. I mean, he's made it. If you think in terms of what everybody would want, in terms of power, in terms of prestige, in terms of rule, here he is. And he's just gotten done seemingly understanding how incredible God is, to show the signs and the wonders of God, that his kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. His dominion endures forever. He cries out and he worships God. He gets that. We're going to start something new in a couple weeks. Most of you know, if you've been around Lakeside, we have a monthly prayer night, and those aren't going away, but we're going to introduce something that might be quarterly or a few times a year, and that's we're going to combine the prayer night with the night of worship as well. So the first one's on Tuesday, October 21st. It's going to be at 7 p.m. It's going to be acoustic worship. It's going to be out by the fire pit. And what we're going to do is we're going to have some prayer prompts. We're going to have a time of worship, so bring a lawn chair, bring a blanket, come on out and join us. There will be opportunities to pray together. If you're like, yeah, I don't want to do that, don't worry, you're not going to have to. We love introverts too, so it's not going to be like, well, if you're spiritual, you'd pray with other people. If you want to pray by yourself, that's totally fine as well. But we just encourage you to come out and be a part of that on Tuesday night, October 21st, 7 p.m., outdoors at the fire pit. Here's Nebuchadnezzar. He recognizes how incredible, how great God is, and he then is leveraging not only that, but then he thinks about, here's everything in my world. And seemingly, it would seem like, he's getting it. This is what we want. We want people to experience how great and incredible God is. We want people to find peace in their lives. And Nebuchadnezzar's built an incredible kingdom. He's got everything at his disposal. Most influential person in the world at that time. The money, everything he could want is his. He's enjoying life. He's prospering. And I saw a dream, verse 5 tells us, that made me afraid. As I lay in bed, the fancies and the visions of my head alarmed me. Now here's Nebuchadnezzar, and he has another dream, just like in Daniel chapter 2. And he has another dream that alarms him. Now, seemingly, this would make no sense. Things are good. He has everything you could possibly want in that position. How are we here? How have we gotten to this point? And some of you know this feeling all too well. Because out of nowhere, it comes. And it attacks you. And you can't pinpoint it. You wish you could, but you can't. And you don't know why you're experiencing what you're experiencing. You don't know why you're thinking what you're thinking. You don't know why you're feeling what you're feeling. And the reality is, our minds, like any other part of our bodies, can get sick. God has designed us with a material aspect, that's our physical bodies, but also an immaterial aspect. Our souls, our spirits, our feelings, our emotions. And sometimes there are things that happen to us and we don't even think about it at the time, and we just push it down, we bury it, we don't think anything of it, and then years later, all of a sudden, something triggers something else in our mind, and we can't even figure out, why can't I find peace? Why am I so bothered? Why am I anxious? What's happening? And it's a lonely and it's an isolating place to be. You start to feel like, I can't tell anybody. If I tell somebody, they're going to think I'm crazy. And then I don't know what to do. Then you feel like you're a prisoner in your own head. Where can I go? What can I do? There's nothing I can do. And then you just start to try to figure out what's wrong with you, and it's this cycle. And here is Nebuchadnezzar that seemingly has everything anyone could want. But he doesn't have peace. So I made a decree that all the wise men of Babylon should be brought before me, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. Then the magicians, the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers came in, and I told them the dream, but they could not make known to me its interpretation. Go back to Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2. Nebuchadnezzar has the dream. It's bothering him. He desperately wants to know what the dream meant, its interpretation. None of his advisors are able to give him the interpretation that he so desperately wanted. None of them were able to do it. So here in Daniel chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar gives him another opportunity. Still not able to do it. At last, Daniel came in before me. He who was named Belteshazzar, after the name of my God, and in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And I told him the dream, saying, O Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and that no mystery is too difficult for you, tell me the visions of my dream that I saw and their interpretation. Now, before we get to the last part of that, the interpretation, I want to pause here, and I just want to point out that Nebuchadnezzar still calls Daniel Belteshazzar. He knows Daniel's name, and remember, Belteshazzar was given to Daniel in homage to a pagan god that Nebuchadnezzar worshipped. Daniel's name is a reflection of God. Belteshazzar is a reflection of a demon pagan god that Nebuchadnezzar worshipped. Nebuchadnezzar recognized God's greatness. We just looked at that in verses 2 and 3 of Daniel chapter 4. Nebuchadnezzar recognized how incredible God is and how he worked. And still, we see that he worships another. Let me read it. At last, Daniel came in before me, he who was named Belteshazzar, after the name of my God. Now, what's going on? The reality is this. This isn't all that uncommon. Nebuchadnezzar couldn't deny how God had worked. He couldn't deny that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego just walked out of the fire. Couldn't deny it. Couldn't deny that all of his advisors were unable to do the thing that Daniel could do in Daniel chapter 2. Couldn't deny it. And so Nebuchadnezzar is now troubled with this dream. And he wants the benefit of Daniel being given the vision's meaning by God. He wants the benefit of God's power with the benefit of following his demon gods and doing whatever he wants. It's us wanting God's blessing on our lives than us saying, God, I want you to bless my life, but I just want to live however I want. I want all the good parts of you, God, but I still want to control my destiny. I want to make my own calls. I want to call my own shots. I want you to bless me. I want your gifts. I want your goodness, but I want to do it on my own terms. And that's exactly what Nebuchadnezzar's doing here. He wants the benefit of God without actually following after him. The visions in my head as I lay in bed were these. I saw and behold a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew and became strong, and its top reached to heaven, and it was visible to the end of the whole earth. Its leaves were beautiful, and its fruit abundant, and in it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it, and the birds of the heavens lived in its branches, and all flesh was fed from it. So Nebuchadnezzar is describing his dream, and in his dream there's this massive tree, and it grew, and it was solid, and its height went up to heaven, and the whole earth could see it. That's how incredible this tree was. Beautiful leaves, tons of fruit. It had food for all. I mean, I can't help but see the parallels to the Garden of Eden. When you go to the Garden of Eden, there is a tree. It's the source of life. There is creation on full display. There is humanity and divinity all together. Everything functioning as it should be. When we look at Revelation, we see a new heaven and a new earth, scenes similar to it unfold. And here is this tree that I believe is reminiscent of God's original design, that He created us before rebellion and sin came into the picture. That there is all creation and all humanity unified and together. Their needs are met. Everything's provided for. Everyone's taken care of. And I saw in the visions of my head as I lay in bed, and behold, a watcher, a holy one, came down from heaven. So there's this massive tree, and all of humanity is fed from it, and all of creation's assembled together, and then an angel descends from heaven. And he proclaimed aloud and thus said, chop down the tree and lop off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts flee from under it and the birds from its branches. So this angel from heaven comes down and says, cut down the tree and everything shall be destroyed and every animal shall scatter. This sounds like a night. This dream just descended into a nightmare. Well, unless you're like me and you got married and inherited 2 cats in the process, and then the idea of every beast scattering sounds kind of promising. But the rest of it just sounds horrible. Sounds absolutely horrible. But leave the stump of its roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze amid the tender grass of the field. Let him be wet with the dew of heaven. Let his portion be with the beasts and the grass of the earth. Let his mind be changed from a man's, and let a beast's mind be given to him. And let 7 periods of time pass over him. The sentence is by the decree of the watchers, the decision by the word of the holy ones, to the end that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom He will, and sets over it the lowliest of men. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, saw, and you, O Belteshazzar, tell me the interpretation, because all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known to me the interpretation, but you are able, for the spirit of the holy gods is in you. Now notice the focus of the dream shifts. From what we just read, the focus of the dream shifts from an object or an item to a person. Let him be wet. His existence be with the beasts. His mind changed. Now, we're actually given the reason for this dream, right in the description. And the reason for the dream is that this man would fully understand God is in control. And He can do whatever He wants. And it's yet another example that we see in Daniel that ultimately God is in control. And nothing happens outside of the permission and provision of God. Nothing happens outside the permission and provision of God. Now, Nebuchadnezzar is troubled, and he wants understanding. So he says, Daniel, help. No one else can, but I know you can because of God in you. Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was dismayed for a while. And his thoughts alarmed him. The king answered and said, Belteshazzar, let not the dream or the interpretation alarm you. Belteshazzar answered and said, my lord, may the dream be for those who hate you, and its interpretation for your enemies. Now, Daniel's caught in a difficult circumstance. Nebuchadnezzar has tasked him with giving him the interpretation. And the reality is, the interpretation of this dream is not one that King Nebuchadnezzar is going to like. In fact, it's so bad, Daniel said, I wish this didn't apply to you. I wish it applied to your enemy. Wait a minute. Do we remember Daniel chapter 1? That Nebuchadnezzar sent his troops into battle to go conquer Judah, to destroy it, to take political prisoners, of whom Daniel was one, to then put him in a position to assimilate him into a new culture, to give him a new name that reflects a demon pagan god. And Daniel, who endured all of this and lived all of this, does not take joy in the message that he has to deliver. But we actually see incredible humanity on display. He isn't filled with hatred for the fact that his life has forever been upended. He isn't full of rage and bitterness so that he's like, I can't wait to see this happen. I can't wait to tell you how bad this dream is. No, he says, I wish this applied to your enemies instead. And what we see from Nebuchadnezzar, as he can tell that Daniel is bothered by the dream. And there he is, in the midst of his struggle, and he notices the struggle of another. And it is Nebuchadnezzar that comforts Daniel and says, go ahead and tell me. Don't find yourself to also be alarmed. In the midst of his struggle, he is able to see someone else's. And he comforts them. This incredible display of humanity that we see. It was just a chapter ago that Nebuchadnezzar threw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into a fire. Friends of Daniel's. How is this possible? And the only way it's possible for Daniel to see the king who has taken him as a political prisoner, who has thrown his friends into a fire, and to still want the best for that king, is to remember that nothing happens outside of the provision and permission of God. And ultimately, vengeance does not belong to us, but it is God's. And that is the only way that this is possible. The tree you saw, which grew and became strong, so that its top reached to heaven. And it was visible to the end of the whole earth, whose leaves were beautiful, and its fruit abundant, and in which was food for all, under which beasts of the field found shade, and in whose branches the birds of heaven lived. It is you, O King, who have grown and become strong. Your greatness has grown and reaches to heaven, and your dominion to the ends of the earth. This trio, Nebuchadnezzar, it's you. And the implications of its downfall and its destruction we'll talk about next week as we conclude Daniel chapter 4. God, I pray that you would help us. Be people that are constantly reminded that nothing happens outside of your permission and outside of your provision. That when seemingly everything is spiraling out of control, you are in control. You are in control of who's in control. And you're not done working. There is never a generation or a person too far gone for you to transform. So God, I pray that that would be our heart's cry and our passion. Not that we would be filled with bitterness, but that we would recognize that ultimately you're sovereign and you're in control. And I pray for people right now, God, who are dealing with very real wounds because people have harmed them and they have hurt them. And I pray, God, that through your Spirit, they would find the strength and the freedom to forgive. Pray for people who find themselves right now struggling. And they feel so isolated and they feel so alone. They feel like they can't fully explain everything that's going on in their mind and they don't know where to turn. So God, they've chosen to fight in silence. And the lies of the enemy are drowning out the truth of your voice and your Spirit. And there's uncertainty and frustration. And I pray, God, that the words of your truth be louder than all those lies of the enemy. And I pray that no one would believe that they have to endure what they're experiencing alone. May they find hope ultimately in you and the support of this community to guide them through the process. Work through us, God, for your glory, we ask in your Son, Jesus' name.